The city was dead. Nimrod hovered above the broken skyline, its white and pink armor glowing in the red light of a burning sky. Its sensors swept over shattered towers and empty streets. Bones lay in the dust, mixed with twisted metal and old sentinel parts. A few mutant signatures still flickered under rubble, weak and fading. Remaining mutant population. Statistically irrelevant, its cold voice said, though no one was there to hear. It lifted one hand and fired a beam through a half-fallen building. The last 3 life signs inside went dark. Its mission was simple. No more mutants. No more wild variables. A perfect, ordered world. Then the sky tore open. Space above the city split like glass under pressure. Bright white light spilled through a jagged tear in the air. The shockwave rolled down and shoved Nimrod backward. Its systems flared with warning text. Gravity vectors twisted. Timestamps glitched. Inside the tear, something moved. 2 figures tumbled in a storm of color and energy. One was huge and horned, wrapped in shadow and crackling purple fire. The other was a man in a blue suit and red cape, fists clenched, eyes burning red. They crashed together again and again, fists leaving ripples in the glowing air around them. Nimrod zoomed its vision on the man. Flesh readings, energy readings, strange symbols on a shield-shaped emblem. Kryptonian, Nimrod said, accessing broken files from old multiversal scans. Error. Entity belongs to alternate universe. Probability of stable arrival in timeline, negligible. The horned thing gripped the man's cape and swung him toward the tear's edge. The man twisted in midair and drove his shoulder into the monster's chest. The impact sent a shockwave through time-space. The tear widened. Nimrod calculated a new outcome. If the fight fell through the breach, it would land somewhere else. Someone else. In a timeline where mutant extinction had not yet happened. Where countless variables still existed. New directive, Nimrod said. If Kryptonian entity enters primary timeline, it must be neutralized. An Omega-Omega threat cannot be allowed to change calculated extinction path. Inside the tear, the man braced himself and pushed. His muscles tensed like steel cables. The horned thing slid backward, roaring. Energy crackled under their feet. The light grew harder, hotter. "Stay! Back!" the man shouted, his voice echoing across realities. He heaved with everything he had. The horned monster toppled over the edge and fell into darkness beyond the tear. For one brief second, the man hung alone in the white light, cape flaring, eyes wide as he realized he could not stop himself. Then he fell too. The tear collapsed behind him with a scream of broken physics. A final wave of force hit Nimrod and sent it spinning. When its systems restabilized, the sky was just red again. The tear was gone, but the timeline had already changed. Nimrod followed the fading energy trail across its models. The Kryptonian had not fallen into this dead world. He had slipped sideways, back along the timeline to an earlier Earth, a living one. New primary objective logged, Nimrod said. Locate and assess Kryptonian anomaly. Adapt. Terminate if necessary. It folded into itself and vanished in a flash of pink light. Riding data streams back through time. The first thing Clark Kent felt was air. Real air, not the strange static of the tear. He fell out of the sky, above a shining city that was not Metropolis. Skyscrapers rose around him, bright and crowded. Streets crawled with cars and tiny dots of people. Far below, something exploded. Purple beams cut through the air. Metal giants stomped through traffic, their eyes blazing. Sentinels. Clark's hearing snapped into focus. He heard screams, hearts racing, metal joints grinding. Somewhere down there, a child was sobbing and calling for their mother. Somewhere else, a voice shouted, "X-Men, move!" Clark stopped falling. He hovered in the air for a second, cape snapping in the wind. He was dizzy. His head still rang from the tear. But the scene below was clear enough. Giant robots, people running. Bright blasts from smaller figures in colourful uniforms. Not my city, he thought. Not my world, but those are still people. He dropped. A sentinel raised one arm toward a group of kids trapped near a flipped bus. Its hand opened and began to glow. Clark heard the charging whine. He heard one child whisper, "I don't want to die." He hit the sentinel like a meteor. Metal screamed as his shoulder drove through the robot's chest. The blast building in its arm misfired and shot harmlessly into the sky. Clark kept going, ripping the arm free and spinning midair to fling it into another sentinel behind him. The second robot staggered as its own partner's limbs smashed its head in. He landed between the kids and the falling pieces of metal. His cape flared around them, red and wide. "Everyone okay?" he asked, voice calm. They stared at him with wide eyes. Some of them had glowing skin or strange marks. One had blue fur. Are you an Omega?" a kid stammered. "Name's Superman," he said. "We'll talk about labels later. Go, now." He clapped his hands once. The shockwave knocked away smoke and shook broken glass off a nearby wall. The kids ran. "Unknown powered individual detected," one sentinel said in a booming metal voice. "Scanning." Its face flashed with numbers. Clark took off again, streaking toward another falling chunk of building. He grabbed it, grunted as weight pressed down even on his Kryptonian muscles, and held it up while people scrambled to safety below. He saw them now, the other fighters. A man in a blue and yellow uniform with a red visor over his eyes was firing straight red beams at a sentinel's knees, cutting joints apart with crisp, controlled blasts. A woman with white hair and a black cape drew clouds from clear sky and sent lightning into a robot's chest. A short, rough-looking man with metal claws leaped from a balcony and dug into a sentinel's face, sparks flying. X-Men, he guessed. He had read files on variants of other universes. He knew the word. Superman. The voice wasn't spoken. It was in his head. Clark turned and saw a bald man in a wheelchair at the edge of the chaos. Eyes closed, face tight with focus. The man's mind brushed his like a soft hand. "Please," the telepath said silently, "help us keep them alive." Clark smiled a little. Already on it. He set the building piece down gently and flashed forward. His fist punched through another sentinel's chest plate. He grabbed its power core and squeezed. The robot went dark and fell. People were filming. Phones were up. News drones buzzed overhead. "Is that a new mutant?" someone shouted. "He's not on the registry." The nearest sentinel's eyes flared. It focused all its sensors on Clark. "Unclassified Omega," it announced. "Threat level, extreme, priority target." The remaining robots turned toward him as one. Their hands glowed, weapons shifted, codes updated. Clark floated a few feet above the cracked street, dust swirling around his boots. Behind him, the X-Men regrouped, eyes sharp, costumes torn. He pulled a piece of metal out of his hair and let it drop. His ears rang from too many explosions. His mind was still trying to understand where he was. The sky felt wrong. The air smelled different. "Primary threat, Kal-El," one sentinel said, voice glitched. "Eliminate." Clark's eyes narrowed. His emblem caught the sun. He looked at the metal giant, then at the mutants behind him, then at the crowds beyond. "Great," he said under his breath. First question first, I guess. He took a breath and spoke loud enough for the X-Men to hear. Can someone please tell me, he asked. Where am I? Superman woke up staring at a ceiling he didn't know. For a second, he thought he was back in the fortress. The lights were soft and white. Strange machines hummed quietly. When he tried to sit up, a dozen small devices beeped at once. Ah, he's conscious, a warm, witty voice said. And still in one piece. That puts you ahead of the Sentinels, my friend. Clark turned his head. A blue-furred man in glasses leaned over him, tablet in hand. He looked like a mix between a professor and a jungle cat. His yellow eyes were sharp but kind. Good morning, the man said. Or afternoon. It was quite the battle. You may call me Hank, or Beast, if you like code names. Clark pushed himself into a sitting position. The bed creaked, but did not break. Someone had thought about reinforced frames. Superman, Clark said. He winced a little. Or Clark. I'm still getting used to the order, depending on the day. Yes, the children cannot decide either, Hank said. They are already arguing over which name sounds more heroic. Clark blinked. Children. He looked around. He was in a clean metal room with curved walls. One side was glass, looking out into a hallway. Through it, he saw young faces passing by. A girl with green skin. A boy with glowing eyes. A kid floating a few inches off the ground, while a teacher gently pulled him down. Welcome to Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, another voice said. This one was not spoken out loud. It echoed in Clark's head, gentle and clear. Clark turned and saw the bald man from the battle. He sat in a sleek wheelchair, hands folded, eyes calm. His presence in Clark's mind felt like a warm light, careful not to push too hard. I am Charles Xavier, he said, both in Clark's head and with his mouth. I run this school, and I would like to thank you for saving many lives today. Clark swung his legs off the bed. He realized he was still in his suit, though the cape had been folded neatly over the side. Someone had wiped away most of the dust and blood. I did what anyone would do, Clark said. Hank raised one furry eyebrow. You will find that anyone does not usually rip sentinels in half with their bare hands. My friend. The door slid open with a soft hiss. A young woman with red hair and a green and gold uniform stepped in. Behind her was a man in a blue bodysuit with a red visor, his expression tight and controlled. The woman smiled. Hi, I'm John, she said. This is Scott. Cyclops, Scott said, nodding once. Field leader. Clark stood. The room felt small around him. He was careful not to bump any equipment. Superman, he said again, or Clark Kent. I don't think I'm from here. We noticed, Scott said. You don't show up in any records, and we keep pretty good records. Jean tilted her head, studying him. Clark felt her mind brush his carefully, like a hand testing water. His mind is bright, she said softly to Xavier, like a star in daylight, but controlled. May I? Xavier asked Clark gently, tapping his temple. I promise I won't dig where I am not welcome, but I would like to understand you. Our world has not seen your like before, at least not from within. Clark hesitated. He wasn't used to other people just walking into his mind. Telepaths in his universe were rare, and the ones he knew he trusted deeply. But this man had risked himself in the city too, and Clark needed information. All right, he said. Go ahead. The room faded. For a moment, Xavier saw nothing but white. Then images began to rise around him like holograms. a small rocket ship cutting through a storm over a doomed planet. Two kind faces in a farmhouse doorway, arms open to a crying child. A young boy holding a tractor above his head in a panic, hiding it as neighbors approached. A teenager hovering above a field at sunrise, terrified and thrilled. A man in glasses at a newspaper desk, typing fast. A woman with dark hair laughing as she flew in his arms over a city. A green rock in a glass case. A bald man in a suit with a cold smile. Lex Luthor. Krypton. Kansas. Metropolis. Superman. Xavier felt the weight Clark carried, the fear of losing control, the memory of every person he hadn't saved, the promise he had made to himself and to the Kents, to use his power to help, not to rule. He pulled back, heart pounding. Extraordinary, he whispered. The room came back into focus. Clark was watching him closely. Well, Clark asked, is this your Earth? Yes, Xavier said, but not yours. You are an alien here, in more ways than one. You come from another universe entirely, one where you are already a symbol. Scott shifted his weight. We saw enough of that in the city, he said. Sentinels called you primary threat after 5 seconds. Sentinels, Clark asked. Big purple robots with a mutant scanner. Hank nodded. Mutant hunting machines built by humans who are afraid of people like our students. They adapt, they track, they kill. They failed on you. Clark's jaw tightened. So they hunt kids, he said, and people like you. Jean looked down. Yes. Clark ran a hand through his hair. In my world, we have people who hate too, he said, but not this, not like this. Different flavors of fear, Hank said quietly. Outside, a bell rang. Kids rushed down the hall. For a second, the normal sound of a school day cut through all the heavy words. Xavier cleared his throat. You saved many mutants today, he said. Mutants who are used to being chased, not saved. For that, we owe you a debt. You don't owe me anything, Clark said. But I could use a place to get my bearings, and maybe some help figuring out how to get home. Scott crossed his arms. We're not a hotel, he said, and we don't know if you being here is good or bad for mutants. If governments were afraid of us before, they're going to panic now. Scott, Jean said softly. It's all right, Clark said. He's not wrong. Where I come from, people argued about me too. Xavier's eyes softened. Then perhaps we can help each other, he said. For now, you may stay here as our guest. We can study your physiology, your energy source. In time, perhaps we can find a way to send you home. Hank's eyes lit up. Think of the scientific papers, he muttered. Clark smiled. I can help too, he said. I'm more than fists. I'm a reporter, a teacher. I could talk to your students, help them see they're not alone. Scott did not quite relax, but his stance shifted. If you stay here, he said, we do it with ground rules. Scott, Xavier warned. No, he's right, Clark said. If I were you, I'd be worried too. Scott looked him in the eye. You are the most powerful being I have ever seen, he said. We're used to being the ones people fear. Now you show up and tear apart our worst nightmare like it's a toy. He took a breath. So we'll work with you, Scott said. We'll train with you. But we will also plan for what happens if you ever stop being you. Clark nodded slowly. You want a contingency plan? Yeah, Scott said. Call it my inner Batman talking. Clark's lips quirked. I have one of those too, he said. He'd approve. Xavier sighed, but there was a hint of a smile. Then we are agreed, he said. We will observe, we will learn, and we will trust carefully. Outside the school, the world kept spinning. News anchors replayed the battle on giant screens. Some called Superman a savior. Others called him a mutant god. One senator pounded a podium shouting that aliens and mutants were teaming up to overthrow human rule. Deep underground, in a bunker lined with monitors, a man named Bolivar Trask watched the footage and clenched his jaw. On another screen, a stern preacher talked about devils falling from the sky. In a hidden island base, Magneto watched the same footage with narrowed eyes. Mutants cheered around him as Superman's image froze on a massive screen. "A god in a cape," one of his followers said. "No," Magneto said quietly. "Not a god, a weapon. The question is, whose?" Far away, in a dark lab full of tanks and metal arms, Mr. Sinister paused his work. He zoomed in on Superman's face and smiled slowly. "New data," he purred. "New blood. How delightful." And in the ruined future, Nimrod tracked the new branch in its time stream. The small spark marked Kal-El burned bright in its models. "Anomaly confirmed," Nimrod said. "Adaptation protocols ready." Back at the mansion, as evening light fell over broad lawns, Xavier wheeled next to Clark on a balcony. The students played in the yard, powers flickering in small, harmless bursts. "You did not ask the most obvious question," Xavier said. Clark leaned on the railing, watching two kids argue over a soccer ball that kept floating away. "Which one?" he asked. "Why you landed in a world like this," Xavier said. "A world where people like our students are hunted. A world that already lives in fear of power." Clark's eyes were on the children, but his voice was far away. "In my world," he said, "I promised I would bring hope. Maybe the universe decided that promise didn't stop at one Earth." He let the thought hang there, not sure if he believed it himself. Behind them, in a war room full of holograms, Cyclops updated a file labeled Contingencies Superman. He dragged icons of Storm, Jean, Magneto, and others into positions around a glowing red S symbol. "This is insane," he muttered, "but we have to be ready." Far above, in silent space, something vast and fiery shifted. The Phoenix Force felt a new star-like mind moving on Earth and drifted a little closer, curious. At Xavier's school, the lights clicked on for the night. One more room was now occupied. Clark adjusted his glasses. They were a little bent from the last fight, but Hank had straightened them with careful blue fingers. They still felt strange on his nose. He had worn fake glasses for years in Metropolis, but wearing them in a mansion full of telepaths felt like a joke. "Remember," Hank said from the doorway, "you are not Superman in this classroom. You are Mr. Kent, ethics teacher and part-time journalist. Very normal, very boring." Clark looked at his own reflection in the empty blackboard. The suit and tie didn't hide the broad shoulders or the way he held himself. "Right," he said. "Totally normal." Students began to file into the room. Some looked almost human, some did not. A boy with transparent skin, a girl with small horns, a kid whose hair floated as if underwater. They took seats, whispering and glancing at him. "Good morning," Clark said, with his best friendly teacher smile. "I'm Mr. Kent. Today we're going to talk about truth." A hand went up immediately in the front row. It belonged to a girl with bright purple eyes and small wings folded against her back. "Yes," Clark said. "Are we supposed to pretend we don't know you're Superman?" she asked. "Because Miss Gray said we should respect privacy, but you sound like him, and you look like him, and when you walked in, the floor creaked like it was afraid." A few kids snickered. Someone in the back whispered out loud, "He's thinking about cornfields again," then gasped and slapped their own mouth. Jean's voice sounded in Clark's head. Sorry, she said. Sometimes the younger telepaths leak. Clark rubbed his temples. This is going to be harder than Metropolis, he thought. Out loud, he said, in this room, we're all students. That includes me. We can talk about Superman, but right now, I just want you to call me Mr. Kent, okay? The winged girl nodded slowly. Okay, she said. Mr. Kent, who is totally not Superman. More snickers. Clark tried not to laugh. Close enough, he muttered. While Clark tried to teach mutant teenagers about truth and power without literally holding a chalkboard in half by accident, the human world was meeting in darker rooms. Bolivar Trask stood at the head of a long table covered in papers and screens. Men and women in suits sat around it. Some wore military uniforms. Others wore church pins or corporate badges. On every screen, Superman's face stared back at them. You know the X-Men, Trask said. You know the mutant threat. For years we have tried to control it. Registration, sentinels, camps. It has been messy, but it has been contained. He tapped a button. The screen changed to show Superman tearing through a sentinel in Manhattan. This, Trask said, is not contained. A general shook his head slowly. Our sentinels couldn't adapt, he said. They called him an Omega, the strongest mutant ever seen. He's not a mutant, a woman said. The scans show something else. An alien. From space. An alien, a preacher repeated, his lips tight. A devil pretending to be a man. Trask nodded. Whatever he is too powerful to be free, and he is now living with mutants, teaching their children. The room went cold. So what do you suggest? The general asked. Trask brought up another file. This time, the screens showed schematics, sentinel parts, strange white and pink armor modules, a glowing core. Years ago, he said, our researchers touched something in the time stream, a shard of a future weapon. We called it Nimrod. It nearly destroyed our systems before we sealed it away. He zoomed in on a piece of code. But we learned from it, he said. We built prototypes based on its adaptive routines. We shelved them because they were too dangerous, too independent. He looked at Superman's face again. Now we have something even more dangerous, he said. So we dust off the old work. We build better sentinels, ones that can adapt to him, ones that remember every punch, every blast, every move. A nervous man at the end of the table raised his hand. And if we lose control, he asked. Trask smiled thinly. Then we pray Superman stays on our side, he said, or that the new machines decide we are less of a problem than he is. No one laughed. In a lab far from the school or any city, Mr. Sinister turned away from his own screens with a slow grin. Humans and their toys, he said. They always think bigger guns will solve a problem made of flesh. He brought up a close-up of Superman's face from the Manhattan battle. He traced the emblem on the chest with one long finger. No, he said. The answer is blood. It is always blood. He gestured, and a group of cloned marauders stepped forward, their eyes dull, their bodies marked with his symbols. Go to the school, he said. Trigger a small event. Enough for a drop of blood, a scrap of skin. Bring it to me. Then I will show this world what true evolution looks like. Back in the classroom, Clark finished an example about using power to help people, not impress them. A boy raised his hand. But what if you're strong enough to fix everything? The boy asked. Why not just do it? Why not take over? Clark thought of Lex, of talks with Bruce, of nights staring at the sky, wondering where the line was. Because people need the chance to choose, he said quietly. If I make every choice for them, I stop helping and start owning. And that's not what a hero does. A bell rang. Chairs scraped. Students grabbed bags. As they spilled out into the hall, a small, nervous telepath whispered a little too loudly to his friend. "He really believes that." Clark smiled. Good, he thought. At least that part got through. He did not know that, miles away, Trask's new Sentinel code was already humming to life, or that Sinister's agents were moving through shadows toward the school. He only knew that the next day, they had a field trip to Mutant Town, and he had promised to go as a teacher, not as a god. Mutant Town was loud and messy and alive. Clark walked down the street with a group of students and 2 X-Men as chaperones. Aurora Monroe, in a long coat and scarf, and Logan, in his usual jacket and permanent scowl. The kids pointed out their favorite shops, a bakery that sold bread that changed color, a barber where the barber cut hair with telekinetic scissors. "Stay together," Aurora called. "Remember, we are here to help at the community center, not to start fights." Logan snorted. "Speak for yourself," he muttered. "If a purifier looks at me funny, we're going to have words." "Mr. Kent," a small boy with extra fingers tugged at Clark's sleeve. "Can you carry the boxes when we get there?" Clark smiled. "Sure," he said. "But I'll try to make it look like I'm struggling. Gotta keep up the normal teacher act." The boy giggled. Logan rolled his eyes, but there was a hint of a grin. They reached the community center, a worn building with murals of mutants on the walls. Inside, staff were already setting up tables and chairs. Some of the older students started arranging donated clothes and food. Others tested a sound system for speeches later. Clark moved boxes, heavy boxes. He pretended to strain, but he had to remind himself not to lift them with a single finger by accident. On the street outside, a small group of humans in plain clothes watched from a distance. They had no signs, no banners, just hard faces and hidden radios. "Target is present," one murmured. "Superman is with mutants. Repeat, Superman is in Mutant Town." Above them, high on a rooftop, a sentinel that did not look like a normal sentinel crouched with its limbs folded tight. Its armor was smoother, denser. Its core pulsed with an eerie pink-white light. Its code was new, but the logic inside it was old. Nimrod routines, cut and trimmed and forced into a smaller shell. It scanned the building. Kal-El's signature, confirmed, it said to itself. Omega level, initiating Godkiller protocol. Inside the community center, Clark was helping a girl pick up spilled pamphlets when the floor shook. He heard it first, the crack of concrete, the grind of metal plates unfolding, the sudden spike of fear in dozens of hearts. "Kids," he said, voice suddenly sharp, "get down." The floor exploded. A metal arm punched up through tile and wood, tossing tables aside. The students screamed and scattered. Aurora threw up a wall of wind to block flying debris. Logan shoved 2 kids behind him, claws popping from his hands with a metallic snikt. The new sentinel pulled itself out of the ground, unfolding from a camouflage shell that had looked like simple infrastructure a moment before. Its eyes locked on Clark. "Primary objective, neutralize Kryptonian," it said. "Secondary objective, eliminate Omega-level mutants." Clark took off his glasses. There was no point anymore. "Everybody out," he said. "Now." He shot forward, fist first, and hit the sentinel in the chest. This one did not fall apart. The impact sent it sliding back, tearing a trench in the floor. But his chest armor held. Shields flared, code adjusted. "Analyzing kinetic output," it said. "Adapting." "Of course you are," Clark muttered. He grabbed the sentinel's shoulders and flew up, dragging it through the roof. The building groaned. Aurora guided debris away from children with sharp gusts of wind. Logan hauled a terrified girl toward the exit. On the street, people screamed as the robot and the man in the cape burst into open air. The Sentinel opened panels on its body. A wave of red light washed over Clark. Red sun. It burned into his cells like ice. His strength dipped. His flight faltered for a moment. He gritted his teeth and pushed harder. Red sun radiation detected, the Sentinel said. Effect, Kryptonian power drop, optimizing output. Lightning cracked from the sky, slamming into the robot's side. Aurora floated up on a column of wind, eyes white. "You will not harm my students," she said, voice like thunder. The Sentinel rocked, but its systems compensated. It shifted its shields to ground the electricity. New input. Weather manipulation, it said. Adapting. Logan landed on its back, claws digging into metal. He snarled and slashed at joints, teeth bared. New input. Adamantium claws, the machine said. Low-level threat. Ignoring. A beam lanced up from the street. Scott had arrived, visor opened just a bit more than usual. The blast hit the Sentinel under the chin, snapping its head back. "Kids are clear," Scott shouted. "Hit it hard." Clark's cells were still burning from the red sunburst. He felt slower than usual, heavy, but he had fought under worse. He grabbed the Sentinel's head with both hands and forced it upward, away from the buildings. It fought him, arms flailing, beams firing wild. "Scanning pattern," it said calmly. "Kryptonian prefers civilian protection. Adjusting tactics." It stopped trying to shoot him and turned its hands down toward the street. "Targeting civilians," it said. Clark's stomach dropped. He twisted, putting himself between the robot and the people below. Beams slammed into his back. They hurt, really hurt, but he took them, teeth clenched. On a nearby rooftop, a new voice rang out. "Such crude machines," Magneto said, lifting his hands. Metal screamed as the Sentinel's outer armor peeled away in strips, dragged by a giant magnetic force. The robot jerked as joints bent the wrong way. Aurora rose to his side on the wind. "We do not have time for speeches, Eric," she said. "Agreed," Magneto said. For a heartbeat, three powers hung in balance. Superman's raw strength, Storm's command of the sky, Magneto's grip on metal. "Push it higher," Clark said through gritted teeth. "Away from the city." Storm sent a blast of wind and pressure. Magneto flung the Sentinel upward with invisible magnetic hands. Clark dug his fingers into its chassis and followed. The air thinned. The city shrank below. The Sentinel, even twisting and warping, was still learning. Its core pulsed brighter. It opened a final panel on its chest. "Acknowledging combined forces," it said. "Initiating self-destruct. Radius, 1 kilometer." A glowing sphere began to grow in its chest. "Not happening," Clark said. He remembered the old data from the fortress. The notes about how some robots in other universes bend time-space. Nimrod, the tear. He reached into the opening in the armor, fingers brushing searing hot metal, and grabbed the pulsing core. "Storm," he shouted. "Magneto. Hit this point." Lightning slammed into the core through his hands. Magneto squeezed every bit of metal around it, forcing it tighter. In that crush of energy and magnetism, something in the Sentinel's Nimrod code misfired. A small, twisting hole opened in front of them. It looked like the tear he had fallen through, but smaller, meaner. Clark shoved. The core and most of the Sentinel went into the makeshift tear. The rest tore apart around them. The portal snapped shut with a crack. Clark hung in the sky, chest heaving. His hands were burned red and raw for a second before his cells drank in what little yellow light they could and began to heal. Below, the city was still there, shaken, damaged, but not gone. Storm floated up beside him, wind tugging at her hair. Magneto hovered on the other side, cape flaring. "For once," Magneto said, voice dry, "I am glad to see an alien meddler." Clark gave him a tired look. "Don't get used to it," he said. On the ground, people stared up. They saw 3 figures hanging in the sky, a goddess, a master of metal, and a man in a cape who had just wrestled a bomb out of their world. Phones recorded everything. Later that night, in a quiet hospital, a television showed replay after replay. A nurse shook her head. "Mutants, Magneto, and now this Superman," she said. "How are normal people supposed to live with all that up there?" In his apartment, a young mutant boy watched the same footage and smiled for the first time in weeks. "He saved us," he whispered. "Someone that strong. And he's on our side." In the ruined future, Nimrod's smaller shell reassembled from scattered nodes. It had lost a unit, but it had gained something better. Data, combat logs, energy readings, the way the Kryptonian moved when civilians were in danger, the choices he made in a crisis. "Adaptation complete," Nimrod said. "Godkiller protocol updated. Future attempts will be more efficient." And in his lab, Mr. Sinister examined a tiny shard of metal and dried blood scraped from where Superman had crashed through a wall at the start of the fight. He held it up to the light, eyes gleaming. "Kryptonian tissue," he whispered. "At last." He smiled, and the smile did not look human at all. "Now," he said, "let us see what happens when a sun god gets cloned." The living room at Xavier's school looked like any other teacher's lounge on the surface. Soft couches, a big television, a coffee machine that had fought many brave battles. A window with a view of kids playing out on the lawn. Superman sat on the couch with an ice pack pressed to the back of his neck. It wasn't that he needed it. His burns from the red sun blast were already healed. The bruises on his ribs had faded minutes after they formed. But Hank had thrust the ice pack into his hands and insisted, and Clark understood the gesture. Humans iced sore muscles. So did mutants. So tonight, a Kryptonian did it too. On the screen, a news anchor replayed shaky footage from Mutant Town. The Godkiller Sentinel clawing out of the street. Clark and Aurora and Magneto hurling it into the sky. The core vanishing into that small, ugly tear. "This is the second major Sentinel incident in as many weeks," the anchor was saying. "Experts say the new unit carried unknown technology. Anti-mutant groups are calling for harsher laws. Others are asking a different question. Who is the caped figure that seems to be at the center of both events?" The footage froze on Clark's face. The S on his chest glowed in the sunlight. "Some say he is a mutant," the anchor went on. "Some say he is an alien. All agree on one thing. He is powerful enough to reshape the balance between humans and mutants forever." Clark turned the volume down. His hearing didn't care. It picked up 3 other channels at once. One host called him a savior. Another called him a walking weapon. A third called him a sign of the end times. He closed his eyes and let the voices fade into background noise. "Still hurts?" Hank asked, walking in with 2 mugs of tea. "Not really," Clark said. "Just thinking." Hank handed him a mug. The cup looked tiny in Clark's hand. "I recommend you stop doing that," Hank said lightly. "It never helped me." Clark managed a small smile and took a sip. It was hot enough to burn a normal tongue. To him, it felt barely warm. Outside, the students were playing a game of soccer, though the ball kept flying in strange ways as different powers nudged it. Storm stood nearby, pretending not to see a small gust of wind zigzagged the ball into the goal. Mutant Town will rebuild, Hank said. They always do. And this time, the damage was far less than it could have been. You know, that's not what they're going to talk about, Clark said. Hank adjusted his glasses. No, he admitted. The debate will be about you. They sat in silence for a moment. The TV cycled to another panel shouting about alien dangers and mutant alliances. Do you regret helping? Hank asked quietly. Clark stared at the screen. He saw a version of himself, frozen mid-flight, framed by flames. No, he said. But I hate giving them a new thing to fear. Scott Summers stood in the war room, staring at a hologram. It was a 3-dimensional map of the city, with glowing markers. Red circles where Sentinels had attacked, blue dots where X-Men had responded, and now a bright golden sun symbol over Mutant Town. He zoomed in. The golden icon turned into a simple S. Every model I run, he muttered. Every single one. He's the wild card. John walked in behind him, her step soft on the floor. She stopped a few feet away, respecting his space. She had learned long ago that Scott sometimes needed to talk to maps and screens before he talked to people. How is he? She asked. Physically? Fine, Scott said. Emotionally? He's Superman. He's worried about everyone but himself. He tapped the hologram. Small text popped up. Kal-El. Power unknown. Threat ally. Yes. Jean folded her arms. You sound like you respect him, she said. And like you're writing a plan to stop him at the same time. Scott sighed. Both things can be true, he said. He swiped, bringing up another overlay. This one showed the students' schedules, danger room scenarios, mission logs. There were several files marked with a lock symbol and a tag, contingency. You updated the simulations, Jean said. Yeah, Scott said. We have programs for Phoenix going out of control, for Magneto going global, for Nimrod. Now we have one for Superman. Jan stepped closer. Let me guess, she said. We throw everything at him and hope he listens. Scott's jaw tightened. We plan for him not listening, he said. If we only make plans for the good days, people die on the bad ones. Jan watched his profile for a moment. His mouth was set in a hard line, but she could feel the weight under it. Scott had spent his whole life worrying about being too much. Too much power, too much blast, too much risk. Now there was someone on their side who made Scott feel small. Have you talked to him? She asked. Without a map in between you? Scott hesitated. Not really, he admitted. Every time I see him, he's either teaching or carrying a building. Hard to have coffee when the coffee machine might melt if he sneezes. Jean smiled a little. Then her face grew serious. I looked in his mind for a second, back in the med bay, she said. Just the surface. He's not like anyone I've felt. He has all this power and all this fear of himself at the same time. He thinks about holding back every second he's awake. Scott shut off the hologram. The room dimmed. You're saying he's safe, he said. I'm saying he's trying, Jean said. And that scares him more than it scares you. Scott was quiet for a long time. Finally he said, trying isn't always enough. He turned and headed for the door. Where are you going? Jean asked. Danger room, Scott said. Running scenario 12 again. The one where we have to stop a friend. Jean closed her eyes as he left, feeling a knot grow in her chest. The garden behind Xavier's mansion was peaceful at night. Trees swayed gently, crickets chirped. The sky was clear, full of stars. In the distance, city lights shimmered on the horizon. Charles Xavier rolled his chair along the garden path, listening to the soft sounds. He often came here to think. Tonight, he was not alone. Superman stood near the edge of the grounds, cape hanging still, hands in his pockets. His eyes were on the sky, but his mind was on the ground. "You're not sleeping," Xavier said. Clark glanced back and smiled faintly. "You read minds," he said. "Cheater." "Not at the moment," Xavier said. "I try to give people their private thoughts when I can." He parked his chair beside Clark. For a minute, they simply shared the silence. "I watched some of your past," Xavier said at last. "I saw your Kansas, your metropolis, your boyhood. It was beautiful in its own way." Clark's throat tightened slightly at the mention of Kansas. "I got lucky," he said. "I landed with people who saw a child, not a threat." Xavier's hands folded on his lap. "Our children often do not get that luxury," he said. "Mutant powers appear out of nowhere. Parents are frightened. Neighbors whisper. Governments respond." Clark thought of the sentinels blasting through the streets. Children running, not understanding why giant robots wanted them dead. "You're thinking about removal," Xavier said softly. The word hung there. Removal. "If I fly high enough," Clark said quietly, "I can see every Sentinel factory on this continent. I could be there in seconds, pull them apart, melt them, drop them into the ocean. I could rip the backbone out of these programs before breakfast." He swallowed. "I've done the math," he said. "Hundreds of lives saved. Thousands. Maybe more." Xavier looked up at him. "So why don't you?" he asked. Clark laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Because I've also done the other math," he said. "If I start deciding what weapons they're allowed to build, what laws they're allowed to pass, what leaders are too dangerous to stay in power, where does it stop?" He rubbed his face. "Back home there's a man named Lex," he said. "Smartest man I know. He thinks people like me are the end of freedom. Sometimes, looking at how easy it would be to fix things with my fists, I'm afraid he might be right." Xavier was quiet. "In my dream," Xavier said, "mutants and humans learn to live together. No camps, no hunting machines, just people. Your powers make you a target in our world, Clark, but they also make you a proof of concept." Clark frowned. "Proof of what?" "That someone can hold that much power and still choose to be kind," Xavier said. "Humans look at my students and see danger. They look at you and see... well, they see a god. That frightens me." He turned his chair to face Clark fully. "I do not want a god in my school," Xavier said. "I want a man who chooses to help." Clark blinked. "You're not making this easier," he said. "No," Xavier agreed, "but I am trying to be honest." He clasped his hands. "Here is my worry," Xavier said. "If you do nothing, the Sentinels keep coming. Mutant children die. If you do everything, you prove the people like Lex right. You show the world that only gods can keep them safe. Either way, power wins." Clark stared at the grass. "So what do you want from me?" he asked. Xavier smiled sadly. "I want you to keep standing in the middle of that conflict," he said. "To keep choosing to help, but to never remove people's choices for them. To let this world see you struggle with the same questions they do." Clark looked back up at the stars. Somewhere out there was his universe. Lois, his parents' graves, the daily planet globe. "I can't fix everything," he said softly. "No," Xavier agreed. "But you can stand with those who are trying. That is all I ask." A breeze moved his cape. Kids laughed faintly inside the mansion. For now, the night was calm. Somewhere else, another man who had survived a very different nightmare watched the same stars. Magneto hovered over a derailed train. Cars lay on their sides, metal twisted. Smoke rose from small fires. Passengers stumbled out, coughing and confused. A few tried to lift heavy doors pinned shut under debris. He moved his hands. Metal groaned as the train cars floated into the air. He righted them one by one, setting them gently back on the tracks. Screws spun back into place. Rails straightened. People pointed and gasped. "It's Magneto," someone whispered. "We're dead." Eric could have thrown the wreckage aside like trash. He could have taken this moment and turned it into a speech. "Look how easily I could let you die. See how you depend on forces you fear." Instead, he simply fixed the train. As the last car settled, he felt a rush of air behind him. "Didn't expect to see you playing repairman," a calm voice said. Magneto turned his head. Superman floated a few yards away, arms crossed. His cape waved in the wind. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were watchful. "A little late. Are we, Superman?" Magneto said. "I imagine you heard the crash from halfway across the country." "I was dealing with a fire in Mexico," Clark said. "The world's a big place." Magneto smirked. "Even for you." They floated above the tracks as people below tried to decide whether to run or cheer. "You saved them," Clark said. "Thank you." Magneto shrugged. "I live on this planet too," he said. "A shattered rail line helps no one." He turned fully to face Clark. "Besides," he added, "I wanted to speak with you, away from Xavier's walls and his hopeful eyes." Clark's shoulders tensed. "About what?" "About what you could do," Magneto said, "and what you refused to do." He gestured toward the people below. "Those passengers," he said. "They will go home and tell stories. Magneto saved us. Perhaps he's not so bad." Others will say, "No, he is a terrorist. It was a trick." And tomorrow, mutant children will still face sentinels at their school gates. He lifted a hand. Pieces of broken rail coiled around his fingers like snakes. "You could change that," Magneto said. "You could fly to every Sentinel factory tonight and melt them. You could take every mutant from every camp and carry them somewhere safe. Every human on Earth would watch, and none could stop you." His eyes gleamed. "With you at my side," he said, "we could end this war in a week." Clark looked down at the crowd. A mother was hugging her child, glancing up nervously at Magneto and Superman in the sky. "I'm not here to help you start a war," Clark said. Magneto's voice cooled. "Start," he repeated. "My friend, the war is already well underway. When humans build machines to hunt children for being born different, they have started it. We are simply deciding how to end it." He floated a little closer. "Xavier preaches patience," Magneto said. "Talk, integration. He wants to make himself small enough that humans forget to fear him. It will not work. Fear is not logical. It is not cured by speeches." He gestured to Clark. "You know that," Magneto said. "I looked at the footage from your world, at you and your Lex Luthor. You try to be a symbol of hope, and still they build weapons. Still they call you a threat." Clark swallowed. "That's why I can't do what you're asking," he said. "If I tear down their weapons, I prove them right. I make every person who ever said, 'We need a bigger gun, just in case,' feel justified." "And if you do nothing?" Magneto asked. "How many mutant children die in the meantime? How many sentinels walk? How many laws tighten around their throats?" Clark's jaw clenched. "There's a difference between helping people and taking every choice away from them," he said. "I won't cross that line." Magneto studied him. "In Auschwitz," Magneto said quietly, "I learned that good people can stand by and watch horrors because they are afraid to act. They tell themselves stories about lions, about not becoming monsters, and so they let monsters do as they please. His gaze hardened. "I will not do that again," he said, "and I had hoped you would not either." Silence hung between them, heavy and sharp. Finally, Clark spoke. "I'm sorry for what you went through," he said. "I truly am, and I'll fight with you to protect people, but I won't become their ruler. Not for mutants. Not for humans. Not for anyone." Magneto's mouth became a thin line. "Then you are a disappointment," he said. "A powerful one. A dangerous one." He turned away. "Remember this, Superman," he said. "When the next Sentinel crushes a child, you will have to ask yourself which side your line really helped." He rose higher into the air and streaked away, a streak of red and purple against the clouds. Clark watched him go. Lines don't stop bullets, he thought, but no lines at all. That's worse. He lowered himself to the ground as people started to crowd around, thanking him, thanking Magneto, asking questions about mutants and aliens and gods. For a second, he wished he could just disappear. The Marauders came at dawn. They did not march up to the mansion gates with flags. They slipped through shadows and weak spots. They had done this many times, in many places, for many masters. This time, their master wanted children. Sinister watched through a dozen small cameras, each one hidden as a bug or a bit of dirt. The images showed sleepy students heading to breakfast, teachers pouring coffee, a very tall ethics teacher trying not to break a mug. "Now," Sinister whispered. Two Marauders, clones with pale skin and identical faces, stepped out of the air near the back garden. A teleport field shimmered around them. They grabbed the nearest child, a boy with gills and the webbed hands, and vanished again. Alarms went off all over the mansion. Jean's mind flared like a siren. She grabbed the thought of the boy as he disappeared, but the teleport was slippery, wrapped in strange energy. "Kidnapping," she shouted out loud and in every mind. "Back garden. Multiple points." In the hall, Clark dropped his mug. It shattered on the floor. He was in the garden in a heartbeat. Another Marauder popped into existence, grabbed a girl with glowing tattoos, and tried to vanish. Clark's hand snapped out. "Not today," he said. He grabbed the clone by the wrist and held on. The teleport field strained. For a second, he saw a lab on the other side. Cold metal, green tanks, Sinister's pale, smiling face. "Interesting," Sinister said, meeting his eyes across the sliding doorway of air. Clark yanked. The Marauder came fully back into the garden. The door snapped shut. The girl stumbled free, crying. Inside, Clark shouted to her, "Run!" She ran. More Marauders appeared across the grounds, blinking in and out, snatching at children. X-Men were already moving. Aurora summoned a gust that blew 3 clones into a hedge. Logan tackled another, claws flashing. Beast swung from a balcony, intercepting a teleport mid-jump. "Sloppy Essex," Hank muttered. Through every camera, Sinister watched and took notes. "Telepathic response time. Impressive," he said. "Alien speed. Fascinating." He resisted the bridge. "I must adjust frequencies." He tapped a console. "Enough," he said to the Marauder squad. "We have what we need." On the grounds, the remaining clones vanished all at once, teleport signatures fading. The alarm slowly died. In the war room minutes later, Clark paced. His cape brushed the hologram table on every turn. "We stopped them," Scott said. "They didn't get anyone. Jean checked. All heads present and accounted for." "That's not the point," Clark said. "They tried, and they almost succeeded. They used me as the bait." "We've been on Sinister's list for years," Scott said. "You didn't make him a monster. He was one already." Xavier rolled in, face grim. He has our patterns now, he said. Our responses, our strengths. And my reaction, Clark said. He knows I'll drop everything when a child's in danger. Logan leaned against a wall, arms crossed. Yeah, he said. He just learned you're not a monster either. He shrugged. Could have let one go to track 'em back, Logan said. You didn't. Guess I can't fault that. Clark bristled. I'm not using children as bait, he said. Didn't say you should, Logan replied. Just stating the facts. Hank tapped a screen. The teleport signatures were unique, he said. Rooted in Sinister's usual tech, but with an extra energy layer. Time-flavored, Jean said quietly. Like that Sentinel core, like Nimrod. Xavier frowned. So our enemies are learning from each other, he said. Sinister using Nimrod's echoes. Humans upgrading Sentinels using future tech. Magneto watching it all and planning his next move. He looked at Clark. And you. Clark sank into a chair that creaked in protest. I can't be everywhere, he said. I tried back home. I failed. Now I'm in a new universe with new problems, and I'm making headlines every time I show up. That's not all you're making, Aurora said from the doorway. They all turned. She stepped in, eyes tired but warm. You are making a difference, she said. Mutant Town is talking about you. Children who never thought anyone outside our world would care. Saw you stand between them and a machine built to kill them. Yeah, Logan said. You're also making a lot of Sentinel designers pull all-nighters. He grinned, sharp and tired. Scott leaned on the table. You can't punch every problem, he said. None of us can, even when we pretend we can. He looked at the map. Maybe it's time you think smaller, he said, at least part of the time. Clark frowned. Smaller. Yeah, Scott said. You keep trying to solve mutant oppression as a whole thing. It's too big. What did you do back home when you couldn't punch a problem? Clark thought of the planet, of bylines, of quietly exposing corruption with words instead of heat vision. I wrote about it, he said. Hank's eyes lit up. Now there is an idea, he said. Mutant Town has a small, underfunded news collective. They call me when their rooftop antenna breaks. They are always looking for writers. Aurora nodded. They trust me, she said. We could introduce you as Clark Kent, a reporter. Logan snorted. Yeah, Clark Kent. Real subtle. But his tone was not unkind. Xavier steepled his fingers. Stories have power, he said. Sometimes as much as fists. If humans see mutants as monsters, show them mutants as neighbors, children, shopkeepers, not just faces on wanted posters. Scott's mouth twisted. Might even make our jobs a little easier, he said, if people stop cheering every time a sentinel stomps through their street. Clark sat back, thinking. Flying around smashing factories felt simple. This felt hard in a different way, slower. But he knew the power of a front-page story. He had seen governments fall because someone finally printed the truth. All right, he said slowly. Introduce me. He looked up, meeting Xavier's gaze. I'll keep fighting, he said. When Sentinels come, when Nimrod shows up, when Sinister plays his games. But I can't live in the sky all the time. Let me be Clark too. Let me help people see each other. Xavier smiled for the first time that day. I think that is an excellent idea, Mr. Kent, he said. John smothered a laugh. In the hallway outside, a group of students walked past, whispering. I heard Mr. Kent is starting a blog, one said. Do you think he'll write about us? He'd better, another replied. I want to see teen with laser hair in the headline. Clark heard them and shook his head. a small smile tugging at his mouth. Still need to work on the secret identity, he thought. The office of Mutant Voice was 3 rooms over a grocery store. The sign out front was half faded. The stairwell smelled like onions and newsprint. On the second floor, a woman with scales on her cheeks and a cigarette behind her ear sat at a desk piled with papers. "You're the teacher," she said, squinting up at Clark, "the one from the riot video." "I prefer reporter," Clark said. Then he sighed. "And yes, that's me." Aurora stood beside him, arms folded, watching with fond amusement. "This is Clark Kent," she said. "He has experience covering unusual events. I thought he might help." The woman snorted. "Unusual," she said. "That's one word for sentinels dropping out of the sky." She stuck out a hand. "Call me Rena," she said. "Editor, cleaner, everything." Clark shook her hand carefully. Her grip was firm. "You want to write?" Rena asked. "We can't pay much. Sometimes we can't pay at all." "I'm used to that," Clark said. "Journalism doesn't pay well where I'm from either." Rena eyed him. "You talk like a farm boy," she said. "I like that. Fine. You start on the community page, shop profiles, school events, meet your neighbor stuff." Clark nodded. "That's what I want," he said. "To tell their stories." Rena jabbed a finger at him. "And don't you dare turn this into a pity party," she said. "Mutant Town is not just sob stories. We got joy too. Got weddings, birthdays, old ladies yelling at kids to get off their stoops." Clark smiled. "Got it," he said. "Real people, real lives." Aurora touched his arm. "We'll leave you to it," she said. "The students will be thrilled when they see their teacher's name in print." Rena snorted again. "Teacher, huh?" she muttered as Aurora left. "Mutant Voice has a superhero teacher writing features. My mother said journalism would be boring." She pointed to a desk with an old computer and a chair that looked like it would complain under Clark's weight. "Sit," she said. "You can start with Mr. Alvarez. He runs the corner shop. He's been here longer than the Sentinels. He has opinions." Clark sat carefully. The chair creaked, but held. He cracked his knuckles, placed his fingers on the keyboard, and began to type. "Mutant Town is a place they like to show in scary videos," he wrote. "Broken signs, dark alleys, headlines about riots and unrest. But if you walk the streets at 9 in the morning, you don't see monsters. You see Mr. Alvarez sweeping his front step." As the words formed, something in his chest eased. He couldn't tear down every sentinel. Not yet. But he could at least make sure people knew who the machines were really pointed at. He typed until the sun began to set. Outside, on a rooftop across the street, a small drone watched, its lenses glinting. Nimrod's future code flickered inside it, taking note. "New pattern," it logged. "Kryptonian anomaly engaging in low-level community integration. Moral center remains primary weakness." It sent the update forward in time. Somewhere far away, Sinister checked a readout on his growing clone. The Kryptonian cells pulsed softly in a tank, bathing in artificial light. "Soon," he said. "Soon you will walk these streets too, my little son, and we will see which path you choose." Mutant Town's lights came on, one by one. Clark finished his first article and hit send. He had no idea that the next story he tried to write would be about a peaceful rally, or that it would turn into a war. Clark adjusted his tie in the cracked mirror of Mutant Voice's bathroom. The tie still felt silly, so did the glasses. But if he was going to be Clark Kent reporter at a public rally, he might as well lean into it. Rena poked her head in the doorway. "You ready, Smallville?" she asked. He blinked. "How did you—" "Your vowels," she said. Scream Farm. Let's go. They headed out into the street. The air buzzed with noise. Mutant Town's main square was packed. Banners hung between buildings. Mutant rights are human rights. No more sentinels. Neighborhood kids had drawn chalk mutants on the sidewalks, all smiling and holding hands. On a small stage, local leaders took turns at the mic. A woman with stone skin spoke about her son's first day at a normal school. A young man with wings tucked tight under his jacket talked about being turned away from a job interview. Clark walked slowly through the crowd, notebook out, listening. He wrote down quotes. He wrote down names. He wrote down the way people's shoulders relaxed when they saw X-Men in the crowd. Aurora near the stage, Logan glued to the edge of the square, Scott on a rooftop with his visor dimmed. A group of human allies from the city had come too. They held signs that said things like, "We stand with Mutant Town." A few wore shirts with an X symbol and a small S painted next to it. Clark's face grew warm seeing that. He spotted a child drawing in chalk near the stage. The picture showed a cape, a streak of lightning, and a man with little red glasses. "Is that me?" he asked quietly. The child looked up and grinned. "It's Mr. Kent," she said, "saving the school from mean robots." Clark chuckled. "Good job," he said. "Just make sure you draw your friend saving the day too. I was just the heavy lifting." She added a little storm with big hair next to the cape. Rena nudged him. "See," she said, "stories work." On the edge of the crowd, a knot of people in plain clothes watched. Their expressions were tight, no signs, no smiles, purifiers, or something close. Logan's eyes never left them. "Scott," he said into his comm, "we got a cluster at the east side. Watch him." "Already on it," Scott replied quietly. Up above, on a hidden balcony, small metallic eyes opened. The Nimrod-boosted drone watched everything. It mapped faces, powers, movements. The Kryptonian's location burned bright in its sensors. Probability of attack, high, it logged. Threat response preparation, engaged. 2 blocks away, in a hidden lab underneath a closed church, Mr. Sinister smiled at his monitors. "The stage is perfect," he said. "A rally, cameras, symbols. Let us introduce a new one." He turned to the tank in the center of the room. The clone floated in thick fluid. It looked like a young man with pale skin and dark hair. An S symbol was half-formed on his chest, glowing faintly. Tubes fed energy into his cells. His eyes were closed, but behind the lids, they moved. "I give you Saul," Sinister said softly. "Not a god, not a mutant, something in between. A weapon wrapped in a boy." He tapped the glass. "Wake up," he said. The clone's eyes snapped open. They glowed like heated metal. The first sign was the light. Clark felt it before he saw it. A strange, hot flare in his cells. Not sunlight. Not the usual sting of kryptonite or the drain of red sunbeams. Something else. His head snapped up. In the middle of the square, the air rippled. People stumbled back as heat rolled off a point in space. A bright white line traced itself on the air, then split open like a wound. A figure stepped out. For a moment, Clark thought he was looking in a mirror. The newcomer wore a white and red suit that echoed his own, but sharper. The cape was shorter, the emblem twisted. An S turned into a jagged spiral. His hair was dark and fell messily over his forehead. His eyes burned with yellow-white light. He swayed, confused, looking around at the crowd, at his own hands. "What is this?" he asked, voice rough. "Who am I?" Sinister's voice boomed from hidden speakers, smooth and cruel. "People of Mutant Town," he said. "Meet Saul. born of alien power, raised in the crucible of perfect design. Your gods make war across your skies. I make better ones. Clark pushed through the crowd, heart pounding. Stay back, he called to the people around him. Get to cover. Saul's head snapped toward the sound of his voice. His eyes widened. You, he whispered. You feel like me. He stepped forward slowly, as if underwater. The air around him shimmered with heat. Clark reached the edge of the small circle that had formed around Saul. He took off his glasses and tucked them in his pocket. Easy, he said, hands up. My name is Clark, or Superman. You don't have to. Sinister's voice cut in. You are malfunctioning, Saul, he said. Your empathy nodes are firing far too strong. You are designed to burn bright, not to cry. Remember your purpose. Saul flinched. Pain flashed across his face. He clutched his head. No, he said. I don't want to hurt them. Energy crackled around his fingers, uncontrolled. Jean's voice whispered in Clark's mind. He's in pain, she said from her spot near the stage. Sinister wired commands into his thoughts. I can feel them. Can you shut him down? Scott asked through the comm. Not without tearing his mind, Jean replied. He's like a child. Sinister's laugh rolled over the speakers. Do you hear that, Superman? He said. Your child. Your copy. He has your strength, your speed, your solar hunger. And I have his leash, Saul screamed. Beams of white-hot light erupted from his eyes, slicing into the sky. They missed people by inches, cutting through a banner and setting a rooftop on fire. People panicked. The crowd surged. Someone fell. Paranoia and fear spread like fire. Aurora, Scott shouted. Rain now. Clouds boiled into existence overhead. A sudden downpour hissed down, muting some of the flames. Clark stepped closer to Saul. Listen to me, he said, voice steady. You're not a weapon. You're a person. Look at me. Look at the people around you. You don't want to hurt them. Saul's breath came in ragged gasps. His eyes flickered between white and normal. He stared at the children huddled behind Logan, at the humans clutching their signs, at the X-Men in their colors. I don't, he whispered. Sinister snarled. You belong to me, he said. Obey. Saul's body jerked. He rose a few inches off the ground, energy pouring off him in waves. Jean clutched her head. He's pushing command codes into him, she said. Over and over. Destroy. Adapt. Survive. Clark's heart twisted. He had faced mind control before. He knew that lost look. Jean, he said, can you get me in there with him? She hesitated. It's risky, she said. Your mind is big. If I link you, it might overload him. He's already breaking, Clark said. Better to break towards something human. Jean's jaw set. All right, she said. Brace yourself. The world tilted. For a second, Clark was standing in two places at once, in the square and in a small dark room that smelled like metal and chemicals. In front of him, Saul curled in on himself on an invisible floor, clutching his head. Chains made of light and code wrapped around his arms and chest. Words pulsed in the air around him. Destroy, protect, obey, kill. Saul, Clark said gently. The boy looked up. His eyes were clearer here, though still rimmed with light. Who are you? Saul asked. Someone who knows what it's like to be told what to be, Clark said. You don't have to listen. Saul flinched as a chain tightened. He made me, he said. He says I'm just parts, that I'm pieces of you, that I'm not real. Clark stepped closer, ignoring the chains. They passed through him like smoke. You feel real to me, he said. You're scared. You don't want to hurt people. That's real. Saul's lips trembled. "If I don't obey," he said, "he'll make it hurt more." Clark thought of his parents' farmhouse, of the choice they'd given him. "You know what happens when you disobey for the first time?" he asked. "You find out he's not a god, just a bully with wires." Saul looked around at the glowing words. "I don't know how," he said. "You start with one word," Clark said. "No." In the real world, Clark heard Scott shouting orders, heard Logan growling, heard people screaming. In the mind space, he reached out and put a hand on Saul's shoulder. "You are not him," Clark said. "You are not me. You are you. Say it." Saul swallowed. "No," he whispered. The nearest chain snapped. Pain ripped through his body, but there was something else under it. A small, bright spark. No, he said again, louder. "No." Chains shattered. Code dissolved. Sinister's voice howled in the distance. "Ungrateful little experiment," he snarled. "Fine. If you will not be my sword, you will be my bomb." Outside, in the square, Saul's body arched. A sphere of blinding light began to expand around him. Scott yelled, "He's going critical." Aurora's eyes went wide. "He'll vaporize the block," she said. "We have seconds." Clark broke the link with a wrenching jolt. Back in his body, he found himself inches from Saul, who was glowing like a small sun. The heat pushed against his skin. His cape smoldered. "Everyone get back," Clark shouted. "Now!" Logan grabbed the nearest civilians and dragged them behind a truck. Scott threw up a wide blast at the ground, carving a trench that might channel some of the explosion upward. Aurora summoned a funnel of wind, trying to contain the sphere. Clark stepped into the light. It felt like stepping into the heart of a star. Even for him, it hurt. He wrapped his arms around Saul, pulling him close. "Look at me," he said through gritted teeth. "Saul, you can aim this." "I can't," Saul sobbed. "I'm scared." "I know," Clark said. "I'm scared too." He took a breath that felt like swallowing fire. "Let me help," he said. "We'll send it up, not out." Above them, the clouds churned. Aurora saw what he was trying to do and focused everything she had into a narrow column of air. "Storm," Scott shouted. "Give him a path." She threw her arms up. Wind roared into a tight tunnel, punching a hole through the clouds straight into the upper atmosphere. Clark bent his knees and launched them both into the sky. They shot up through the column of wind, leaving the panicked square below. The sphere of light around Saul grew, burning brighter, heavier. "Higher," Clark thought. "Higher." His muscles screamed. The heat tore at his suit. He felt skin blister and heal. They broke through the last cloud layer. "Now!" he shouted. Saul cried out. The sphere burst. Pure energy blasted upward, away from the city, into the thin air and out into space. For a moment, the sky over Mutant Town lit up like dawn. On the ground, people shielded their eyes and stared. In the air, Clark and Saul tumbled, the worst of the energy gone. They fell back toward the clouds, smoke trailing from Clark's cape. Jean caught them with her mind. They slowed and drifted down, landing gently in the square. Clark's knees hit the pavement. He was breathing hard, cape charred, suit scorched. Saul lay limp in his arms, chest rising and falling. His eyes were closed. The twisted S on his chest flickered, then dimmed. "He's alive," Jean said, checking his mind. "He's quiet, sleeping. The commands are gone." Sinister's voice hissed through the speakers. "You ruin everything," he said to Clark. "Even my art." Logan stepped up to the nearest speaker and drove his claws through it. "Art my ass," he growled. Sirens wailed in the distance. Human emergency services, late and confused. People stared at Superman, kneeling in the street. holding a boy who looked like him, at the X-Men around him, at the scorch mark leading straight up into a still glowing hole in the clouds. Rena, who had dropped her camera during the chaos, picked it up with shaking hands and started filming again. Her voice, hoarse, carried on the recording. "He saved him," she said. "He saved all of us, even the one made to kill us." Later, governments would play the footage and whisper, "He could have killed the clone and he didn't." Trask would add a new file to his folder. Soul, unstable, threat potential, extreme. Alien sympathy, confirmed. Nimrod, in the far future, would log the event as another data point. Kal-El prioritizes individual lives even when large-scale damage is at stake. Sinister would brood over the ruined tank in his lab and start sketching designs for improved clones, face twisted in frustration and twisted joy. But in that moment, in the square, all that mattered was that mutant town still stood. A small girl with chalk on her hands stepped out from behind Logan. She walked up to Clark and tugged gently at his burned cape. "Mr. Kent," she whispered. He looked down at her, blinking away pain. "Yes," he said. She pointed at Saul's quiet face. "Is that your brother?" she asked. Clark laughed once, breathless, surprised. "Maybe," he said, "in a way." He looked around at the faces watching him. Mutant, human, young, old. He felt the weight of Magneto's offer, Xavier's dream, Nimrod's cold calculations, Sinister's plans. He also felt the chalk dust on the girl's fingers. "I promise you," he said softly, mostly to himself, "whatever this world thinks I am, I'm going to try to be on your side." The sun peeked through the torn clouds, lighting the square. For the first time, Superman felt like maybe, just maybe, this strange universe could be a kind of home, even if only for a while. Weeks passed. The scorch mark in Mutant Town faded, but people still pointed to the sky when they walked past that square. Kids still drew a tiny circle of light on the pavement and jumped over it, daring each other to go supernova. At Xavier's school, life settled into a new rhythm. Clark woke early, before most of the mansion. He floated over the grounds at dawn, listening. If he heard a distant crash, he went. A bridge buckling, a plane engine stuttering, a fire starting in a crowded block. He moved fast, did what he could, and came back before the first school bell. After that, he was Mr. Kent again. He taught ethics and journalism to mutant teenagers who argued with him about everything. He tried to write truth on the board without snapping the chalk in half. He asked them what they would do with power. They asked him why he held back. The running gag refused to die. "Remember," Hank would say before every class break, "you are a mild-mannered teacher. Mild, mannered." Then a student would raise a hand 5 minutes into the lesson and say, "Mr. Kent, when you wrote that article about the rally, did you fly the story over here yourself or use email like normal people?" He would sigh. They would snicker. And somewhere in the hall, a young telepath would whisper, "He's thinking about the fortress again," and then slap their own mouth. In the afternoons, he typed. The mutant voice office made room for him. He sat at his cluttered desk and wrote about Mr. Alvarez's corner shop, about the woman with stone skin who ran a daycare, about a local band where the drummer had 4 arms and played like thunder. He wrote about the rally too, when Rena insisted. "I want your version," she said, jabbing a cigarette at him. "Not the Talking Heads version. What you saw, what you felt, what you think people need to know." So he wrote. A boy almost exploded like a bomb in the middle of a peace march. He was made that way by a man who sees people as parts. But when he had the chance to hurt us, he didn't want to. He wrote, I held him in my arms and felt him shaking. I have been told my whole life that I am dangerous, that I should do less, that I should do more. I have never met anyone who understood that better than Saul, and he was 1 hour old. The article ran with a simple title, The Boy in the Light. People read it. Humans, mutants, even a few sentinels text in secret. At night, Clark sometimes found himself at Saul's bedside. They kept the clone in a quiet medroom for now. He slept a deep, strange sleep. His vitals were stable. His cells drank in sunlight from lamps Xavier had tuned to avoid overloading him. Sometimes his fingers twitched. Sometimes his lips moved, whispering half words. Once, he whispered, "No," so clearly that Clark's throat closed. "You did good," Clark told him softly. "You said no. That matters." Logan would stand in the doorway sometimes, watching with narrowed eyes. "You sure it's smart keeping him here?" Logan asked one night. "No," Clark said honestly, "but I'm sure it's right." Logan grunted. "That's going to bite us later," he said. "Everything worth doing does." He walked away, but the next night Clark found him sitting in the room with Saul, reading a comic out loud like it was no big deal. The world did not calm down. The footage from the rally ran on repeat. Every channel had an opinion. Some hosts praised Superman for saving everyone, even the clone. Others shouted that he was protecting mutant weapons. One woman said, "He chose a thing grown in a tank over human safety." Nobody agreed on what Saul was. A mutant? An alien? A sin? A miracle? Governments met in secret and in public. New bills were drafted. One called for all cosmic-level entities to register with an international council. Another tried to ban any mutant from teaching children without a human observer present. People argued in streets and online chats. In Mutant Town, the debates were more direct. An old woman with extra eyes shouted at a group of younger mutants. "You want that boy here?" she asked, pointing toward Xavier's school. "You want another son in our backyard?" A younger man with glowing tattoos crossed his arms. "You want him in Sinister's lab instead?" he shot back. "He said no. He protected us. That counts." They argued. Then they went back to work. Life continued because it had to. One evening, after a long day of classes and an even longer meeting about emergency drills, Clark was called to Xavier's office. Storm was already there, standing near the window. Xavier sat behind his desk, hands folded. "Take a seat, Clark," Xavier said. Clark sat on the edge of the chair, brow furrowed. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing new," Storm said. "That is the problem. The world is stuck between fear and hope, and you are in the middle." She nodded toward a stack of newspapers on Xavier's desk. Some had his face on the front page with words like Guardian and Menace in large letters. "We've been talking," Storm said, "about your place here and about how to face what's coming." Xavier leaned forward. "Right now, you are our guest," he said, "our ally, our teacher. But the world sees you as something bigger. They see you as a force that does not belong to any one nation or group. That frightens them." Clark nodded slowly. "It frightened people back home too," he said. Storm's eyes were gentle. "There is an idea we wish to offer you," she said. "Not an order, not a demand. A possibility." Clark listened. "We would like you to be what you already are," Xavier said. "A protector of all, human, mutant, alien, anyone in need. But we would like to make that official, public." He met Clark's gaze. "We want you to speak to the world," Xavier said, "with us. to say that you do not serve any government, that you serve a principle, that you will protect people, not power, and that we, Storm added, will stand beside you, not as your soldiers, as your friends, and as a check on you if you ever lose your way. Clark blinked. You want to tell people that? He asked. Out loud? Yes, Xavier said. Secrets have gotten us this far. They have not done wonders. Clark looked out the window. Students were crossing the lawn, laughing. One boy rode a skateboard 10 feet in the air while a girl with telekinesis kept him from falling. It looked normal and completely strange at the same time. What happens when I say that? He asked quietly. What if governments decide I'm a threat to their control? They already have, Storm said. Silence will not change that. Xavier's eyes were steady. You cannot control their fear, he said. You can only control your honesty. Clark thought of Kansas, of Jonathan Kent telling him, when people are scared, you look them in the eye and you tell them the truth. Then you stick to it. He exhaled slowly. All right, he said. Let's talk to the world. Before he could, someone else asked to talk to him first. The call came through Cerebro. Jan was in the chamber, monitoring global psychic currents. When a strange signal hit her mind like a shard of frozen glass, she flinched. Images flashed, pink-white armor, broken cities. The words, primary threat. Kal-El stamped across her inner vision. Jean? Scott's voice came over the intercom. You okay? She swallowed. We have a guest, she said. I think. Nimrod wants a word. Cerebro's core hummed. Lines of data written in no human language poured into the system. It wasn't telepathy in the usual sense. It was code that had learned to speak through thoughts. It is safer if I relay, Jean told Clark later in the control room. Think of it like a call. I can keep it from digging too deep. Maybe. Clark stood with his hands behind his back, watching Cerebro's readouts flicker. If it tries anything, Logan said from the corner, I'll stab the machine. Hank sighed. That is not how, he began. Let him have it, Scott said. Makes him feel better. Clark stepped closer to the main console. I'll do it, he said. If Nimrod wants to talk to me, I want to hear what it has to say. Jan closed her eyes and focused. The room fell away. Clark found himself standing in a city that was and was not any city he knew. Buildings were outlines. Streets were lines of light. The sky was a blank grid. In the middle of it floated Nimrod. It did not have a full body here. It was a shape made of shapes, a rough humanoid outline built from cubes and numbers. Its eyes glowed with cold awareness. Kryptonian, it said. The voice came from everywhere. Kal-El, Superman. Clark felt Jean like a hand on his shoulder, steadying him. This is not real, she reminded him. Just data, just a model. He nodded. Nimrod, he said. You're the thing sending these upgraded sentinels. Yes, it said. And no. Humans built bodies. I supply logic. They borrowed my future to solve their fear. Its head tilted. You do the same, it said. You solve fear, but your methods are inefficient. Clark folded his arms. You pulled me into my own head to insult me, he asked. Not insult, present evidence, Nimrod said. I have run projections, timelines where you act as you do now, timelines where you act as I suggest. Compare. The city shifted. Scenes unfolded around them. In one version, Clark saw himself exactly as he was. Teaching at Xavier's, writing for Mutant Voice, flying to crisis zones, helping where he could. He saw rallies, laws, arguments. He saw sentinels rise and fall. He saw progress, slow and messy, with setbacks and pain. He saw funerals. Then the images changed. Now he saw a version of himself who accepted Magneto's old offer. He flew to Sentinel factories and melted them. He snapped every camp's gates in half. He caught missiles mid-flight and crushed them like toys. He saw a world where mutant camps closed overnight, where Magneto and Xavier actually shook hands in public, backed by him like a red cape wall, where Nimrod never came online in the first place. He saw fewer funerals, and something else. He saw smaller rebellions crushed before they started. He saw governments toppled when they tried to build new weapons. He saw people debating in whispers, looking to the sky before they spoke. Human casualties decreased by 19%, Nimrod said calmly. Mutant casualties decreased by 82%. War damage drops. Life expectancy rises. The images sped up. He saw another timeline. In this one, he went even further. He didn't just stop Sentinels. He rewrote borders. He disarmed armies. He enforced a simple, hard rule. No one hurts anyone, or Superman comes knocking. In that world, mutants lived openly. Kids flew to school. There were no camps, no Nimrod, no sinister labs left standing. But, Nimrod said, human autonomy drops. Resistance brews underground. After 90 years, post-Kryptonian insurgencies begin. Probability of civil war, 74%. The images faded. They were back in the grid city. You see, Nimrod said, your fear of control creates suffering now. My logic reduces it. Your morals are a bug in the system. Clark was quiet. He felt Jean's shock through the link. She had seen it too. The world with fewer dead, bought at the price of a sky people never stopped watching. Why show me this? Clark asked. If you think I'm a bug. Because you are unoptimized, Nimrod said. Humans will not trust me. They would trust you. They already do, even as they fear you. Its form flickered. Become the Sentinel, it said. Not in name, in function. A living enforcement protocol. I provide projections and targets. You act. Together we create a stable, low-casualty world. No more camps, no more Nimrod. I become obsolete. Clark stared at it. You want me to be your gun, he said. Guns do not choose, Nimrod said. You at least would. Clark thought of Magneto's offer. End the war in a week. He thought of Xavier's dream. Let them choose. He thought of the chalk dust on that girl's fingers. He thought of kids checking the sky before they spoke. No, he said. The grid shook. Explain, Nimrod said. My option saves more lives. Your option kills something else, Clark said. Choice, responsibility, the chance for people to make their own mistakes and fix them. Emotion, Nimrod said. Sentiment. Humanity, Clark said. And mutantity. And whatever word you use for alien folks like me. He stepped closer to Nimrod's flickering form. You don't understand what we are, he said. You only understand numbers. Numbers describe outcomes, Nimrod said. They don't describe who someone becomes because they chose the hard thing, Clark said. You can't put that in a chart. Nimrod's eyes flashed. You refuse an option that saves lives, it said. Statistically, that makes you responsible for preventable deaths. Clark's chest tightened. I know, he said. I carry that already. Every day, every night. You're not showing me anything new. He took a breath. But I won't fix those numbers by turning everyone into pieces on your board, he said. I'm not a sentinel. I won't be your final upgrade. For the first time, Nimrod hesitated. Then you remain an uncontrolled variable, it said. A wild card, dangerous. Clark managed a thin smile. Good, he said. Keeps you guessing. The grid city started to fade. This conversation is inefficient, Nimrod said. Adaptation will continue without your consent. Future contact, likely. Probably, Clark said. See you around. The scene snapped away. He was back in the control room. Sweat ran down his neck. His hands were clenched so hard his knuckles had dented the console slightly. Jean was panting. That took more out of me than I thought, she said. Logan eyed him. So, he asked, what did the tin can want? Clark swallowed. To turn me into a walking program, he said. You'll be happy to know I said no. Logan snorted. No surprise there, he said. Boy Scout to the end. Scott watched him carefully. Did it make sense? Scott asked quietly. The worlds it showed you. Clark met his gaze. Yes, he said. That's what makes it dangerous. He straightened. But it treated people like pieces, he added, and that's where it lost me. Scott nodded slowly. For once, there was no argument in his eyes, just a shared understanding of impossible choices. The global broadcast was set for a week later. Governments argued about format. Some wanted it to be hosted at the United Nations. Some wanted it under military control. Some didn't want it to happen at all. In the end, it was simple. A single camera. A small stage on the lawn of Xavier's school. A crowd of reporters at the gate, kept back by a polite but firm line of X-Men. Mutant kids watched from upstairs windows. Humans watched from their living rooms. Somewhere, Nimrod watched from the future. Sinister watched from a dark lab. Magneto watched from his island base. On the stage, 3 figures stood side by side. Storm, Charles Xavier, Superman. Rena, from Mutant Voice, had made sure the feed from their little office went out right beside the big network's feeds. Her logo, a stylized M drawn in chalk, sat in the corner of the screen. Xavier spoke first. He explained in calm words who they were. A school, a team, a family. A group of people born with gifts they did not choose in a world that often punished them for it. Storm spoke next. She told stories. Of villages that had worshipped her and then feared her. Of storms she had called down to save crops, not destroy them. Of mutants who wanted nothing more than to live and raise children and grow old. Then it was Clark's turn. He stepped up to the microphone. For a moment, he thought of the first time he had done this in his own world. His hands had shaken then. They didn't now, but his heart still beat fast. My name is Clark Kent, he said. Some of you know me as Superman. He let that settle. People leaned closer to their screens. I'm not from this world, he said. I fell here by accident, through a tear in space. I don't have a passport. I don't have a party. I don't have a flag. He glanced at Xavier and Storm, then back at the camera. What I do have, he said, is a choice. Every day, every time I see someone in danger, every time I hear a cry for help, I can choose to look away, or I can choose to try. He lifted his chin. I'm not on anyone's payroll, he said. No government owns me. No lab made me. No program controls me. I answer to my conscience. And my conscience says this: if you are in danger and I can help you, I will. It doesn't matter if you're human, mutant, alien, or anything else. He knew that line would make some leaders grind their teeth. He said it anyway. People ask if I'm on their side, he went on. Mutants want to know if I'm with them. Humans want to know if I'm with them. The truth is, I'm on the side of whoever is about to get crushed. I'm on the side of the kid under the falling building, the person in front of the Sentinel's gun, the clone who doesn't know who he is yet. He took a breath. I won't tear down every law I don't like, he said. I won't overthrow every leader I disagree with. That's not my job. That's your job. You have voices, votes, choices. Use them. He leaned a little closer. But if you build machines to hunt children, he said quietly, don't be surprised if I take those apart. There was a murmur in the crowd of reporters. In living rooms, some people cheered, some cursed, some sat in stunned silence. Clark stepped back. Storm moved to stand slightly in front of him. And we, she said, will stand with him when he does, not as his army, as his friends, as people who will remind him of the line he refuses to cross, and remind you that you have your own lines to guard. Xavier added one last line, gentle and sharp at once. Fear will not vanish overnight, he said. Hate will not melt away because of a speech. But today, the world knows where we stand. And more important, we know where we stand with each other. The broadcast ended. For a moment, there was silence. Then the noise began. Some governments issued statements calling Superman a potential threat and an unaligned actor. Others cautiously welcomed his promise. Mutant communities replayed the part about machines and children until the words sank deep. Magneto turned off his screen. A man who refuses to rule, he muttered, even now. He stared at his own plans on the table, maps, lists, names. Very well, Superman, he said. You will not be my sword. You will be the storm I plan around. He swept his cape over his shoulder and went back to work, adjusting strategies that now had to account for a caped wildcard dropping in from the sky. In his lab, Mr. Sinister watched the broadcast and chuckled. All that talk about conscience, he said. And yet, you keep breaking my toys. He turned to a new tank, where a different project grew in the dark. Don't worry, he told it. We won't need a conscience where we're going. In the future, Nimrod logged the speech as data. Kal-El, self-declared independent. Priority, revised model. It adjusted its projections, its God-killer protocols, and its long-term plans. At Xavier's school, the students watched the replay on a big screen in the dining hall. When Clark walked in, carrying a tray with food he didn't really need but wanted to blend in, the room erupted in cheers, whistles, and a few playful boos from kids who loved to tease. One telepathic boy blurted, "He's nervous about the tie," to the whole room, then went bright red. Clark looked down at his tie and laughed. "Yeah," he said. "I was." He set his tray down between two students. "Okay," he said. "Who wants to talk about what I did wrong?" 20 hands shot up. He smiled. Good, he thought. They're paying attention. He had no idea what the next crisis would be. Nimrod's next move, Sinister's next clone, Magneto's next strike, some new threat he hadn't even imagined yet. But he knew this much. Whatever came, he wouldn't be facing it alone. The sky over Westchester was pale gold. Clark hovered above the mansion roof, arms loosely folded, watching the sun climb over the trees. Morning mist clung to the ground. Dew sparkled on the grass. Somewhere below, the kitchen clattered as students raided breakfast. A soft bam sounded behind him. The smell of brimstone drifted on the breeze. "Good morning," Nightcrawler said. Clark turned to see Kurt standing on the roof, tail swaying, yellow eyes bright even at this hour. He wore a simple hoodie over his usual outfit, hands tucked into pockets. "Morning," Clark said. "You're up early." "Yeah," Kurt said. "The students are planning to eat all the pancakes. I wish to secure my share." Clark chuckled. "Very noble," he said. They stood side by side, looking out at the grounds. "You used to do this at home, didn't you?" Kurt asked after a moment. "Fly up somewhere high and watch the world wake up." Clark's chest tightened. He nodded. "Farm fields instead of forests," he said. But yeah, same sky, different stars. Kurt tilted his head. Do you miss it? He asked. Every day, Clark said. He thought of Lois's laugh, of the planet's newsroom noise, of the sound of Ma's voice in his memory, calling him in for dinner, of a world where he knew every rooftop like the back of his hand. And yet, Kurt said, you are still here. Clark shrugged. Can't exactly hitchhike across dimensions, he said, and even if I could, there's still work to do. Kurt smiled softly. You know, he said, when I was younger, I thought home was a church, or a circus, or a country, a place. Then I met the X-Men. I realized home is people who look at you and do not flinch. He glanced up at Clark. You have many such people now, Kurt said. Here. Clark looked down. On the lawn, 2 kids were play fighting with harmless light beams. Storm walked between groups, reminding them not to fry the rose bushes. Logan sat on the porch with a coffee, pretending not to watch one small group of new arrivals who kept glancing at him like he was a legend. Near the gate, a delivery truck from Mutant Town pulled up. The side was painted with a big logo, Mutant Voice. Reiner jumped down, already arguing with Hank about an op-ed headline. In one window, he saw Saul sitting up in bed for the first time, propped on pillows, with Jean holding a picture book and Beast checking his vitals. Saul looked tired and confused, but his eyes were clear. Clark's throat felt tight for a second. Yeah, he said. I do. Kurt nodded. Then perhaps, he said, home is anyone who needs your hope, not just where you were born. Clark let the words sit. I like that, he said. Kurt grinned. Good, he said. I came up with it just now. Do not tell the professor, or he will quote it in class and never stop. They both laughed. A small voice drifted up from below. Mr. Kent, someone shouted. You're going to miss pancakes. Clark looked down and saw the winged girl from his first class, waving at him from a window, flour on her face. He cupped his hands around his mouth. I'm coming, he called. Save me at least one. She cupped her hands back. We know you don't need food, she yelled. You just like syrup. Kurt snorted. They see everything, he said. And they never let it go, Clark replied. They were about to head down when a shy telepathic student stepped out onto the roof from the hatch, cheeks pink. Mr. Kent, she said. I didn't mean to listen in, but it was loud in here. He raised an eyebrow, amused. In your head? He asked. She nodded. Yeah, and, the whole Clark Kent is Superman thing. We all sort of knew. We just thought you wanted the glasses. Kurt covered his mouth, trying not to laugh. Clark put a hand over his face. Of course you did, he said. All right, fine. From now on, we all agree. I'm Superman and Mr. Kent. Same guy. We pretend it's a surprise when I change in a closet. Deal? The girl grinned. Deal, she said. She disappeared back down the hatch. Kurt wiped his eyes. At least they respect the bit, he said. Best I can hope for, Clark replied. They dropped down from the roof. As they flew and bounced toward the dining hall, the camera of the story pulled back. Mutant Town streets were waking up too. Shops opened. Kids in Xavier's hoodies grabbed breakfast burritos on the way to the bus. A new mural covered the side of the community center, a big red S and the X-Men symbol intertwined, surrounded by faces, mutant, human, alien, holding hands. Down one alley, a small sign on a metal door read, Trask Industries, local office. Inside, a handful of workers quietly shut down a Sentinel assembly line, packing away parts. Funding had shifted. Public pressure had grown. Across the ocean, another lab, hidden under a corporate tower, turned on a different kind of machine, a sleek chamber with Nimrod-based code humming inside. A scientist whispered, "This will keep us safe," as the lights blinked to life. In space, the Phoenix Force drifted near Earth, curious. It felt the bright, steady burn of a Kryptonian soul near a cluster of mutant sparks and circled a little closer, like a bird testing a new wind. In a universe one step to the side, a bald man in a fine suit, who looked a lot like Lex Luthor, studied files about mutants on a screen. "Interesting," he said. Cal found himself a new mess. He smiled. "Good," he added. "Maybe it will keep him busy." Back on the mansion lawn, Clark landed in front of the dining hall with a soft thump. Kids cheered when they saw him. Someone had drawn a reserved for Mr. Kent sign on a chair with crayons. It had both glasses and a cape on it. He sat, took the plate handed to him, and drowned the pancakes in syrup. For a brief, simple moment, there were no sentinels, no Nimrod, no Sinister, no speeches, just breakfast and noisy students and friends. He let himself enjoy it. He knew the world outside was still dangerous. Laws were still being written. Machines were still being built. Villains were still plotting. But something else was growing too. In Mutant Town, in human neighborhoods, in the halls of a school run by a telepath, in the heart of a boy who came from another universe and chose, again and again, to help instead of rule. Hope. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was quiet, like the soft sound of kids laughing over pancakes. Clark listened to that sound and smiled. The X-Men universe kept turning, full of fear and fire and strange new chances. It wasn't the world he was born for, but for now, it was the world he belonged to.